When most people think of love, they imagine warmth, closeness, comfort. They imagine two people coming together and finding safety in one another's arms. But for an avoidant, love is not safety. Love is exposure. It is like being dragged out into the sunlight after living in the shadows for years. And that sunlight feels blinding, almost unbearable, because it shines on the very parts of themselves they've spent a lifetime trying to hide. Here's the paradox you need to understand. The very moment you think an avoidant should feel most secure in love is the exact moment they feel most threatened. Why? Because love penetrates the defenses they've built to protect themselves. And those defenses are not casual walls. They are survival mechanisms forged through years of experiences, often shaped in childhood, where intimacy equaled danger, inconsistency, or abandonment. To an avoidant, love does not initially feel like a gift. It feels like a risk of being truly seen, and worse, of being rejected after being seen. So when an avoidant starts to care deeply about someone, something extraordinary happens inside of them. Their body reacts, their mind resists, their emotions intensify. And the secret sign that they're in love is not that they lean in, it's that they pull back. That discomfort you notice, that strange tension, that hesitation, it isn't indifference. It's exposure. It's the feeling of their heart being cracked open against their will. Think about it. When someone who has always valued independence suddenly pauses in your presence, when their words get shorter, when their actions get inconsistent, it's not because they don't feel anything. It's because they feel too much. Love has crossed the threshold of their carefully constructed boundaries, and now they don't know if they can handle it. Their system screams, "Run," while their heart whispers, "Stay." This is where so many people misread the avoidant. You think their pulling away means they don't care. You think their silence is rejection. But it's often the opposite. It is the weight of love pressing down on someone who has never known how to carry it. It is a heart learning to breathe in an atmosphere it was never trained to live in. And here's the deeper truth. The reason this exposure is so terrifying is because, for the avoidant, love equals powerlessness. To admit they love you is to admit you could hurt them. To open up is to give you the very weapon that could destroy them. That's why their secret sign of love is not comfort, but discomfort. The moment they feel deeply, they start showing you the cracks in their armor, not because they want to, but because love forces it out of them. Now, here's what you need to reflect on. When you see that exposure, you have two choices. You can take it personally, assuming they don't care, assuming they're rejecting you. Or you can understand what it really means. It means you matter. It means you've reached a depth no one else has. It means they are fighting a battle between their instinct for self-preservation and their longing for connection. And if you misinterpret it, you may walk away without realizing you had already touched the deepest part of them. Philosophically, love always exposes us. It exposes our fears, our wounds, our insecurities. It reveals who we are when the masks fall off. For most people, that exposure is tolerable, even welcome, because they've been conditioned to believe intimacy equals safety. But for the avoidant, intimacy equals danger. So when they are deeply in love, the mask doesn't just slip, it shatters. And for a personality built on control, that's terrifying. But that terror is the evidence. It is the proof. If you can begin to see their discomfort not as absence of love, but as the strongest sign of it, you'll unlock a completely different perspective on their behavior. Love for an avoidant is not measured by how smoothly they move toward you. It is measured by how vulnerable they become when you're near. And maybe that's the most profound lesson here. Love is not always about comfort. Sometimes love is about exposure. Sometimes the truest sign that someone loves you is not in their embrace, but in their hesitation. Not in their words, but in their silence. Not in their ease, but in their unease. So the next time you see an avoidant wrestling with their emotions, pulling back even as their eyes betray their care, don't dismiss it. Recognize it for what it is: love, unrefined, unpolished, and raw. The kind of love that scares them precisely because it is real. Because when an avoidant is deeply in love, they don't feel safe. They feel seen. And that is the most terrifying and yet the most authentic sign of love they can ever give. When most people think about love, they look for the obvious signs: words of affection, declarations, romantic gestures, the "I love you" said out loud. But with avoidance, the rules change. Their expression of love is not loud, not verbal, not even always visible. In fact, the most powerful sign of their love often comes wrapped in silence. And to truly understand them, you have to learn how to hear what they're not saying. Let me explain. The avoidant nervous system is wired to protect itself from intimacy. When they feel themselves falling for someone, their instinct is not to lean in, it's to retreat. But retreat does not mean rejection. Their silence is not absence, it's presence in disguise. It's their heart speaking the only language it knows when the words become too dangerous. Think about it this way: words are risky. To say, "I love you," is to declare vulnerability, to open the door to rejection, to hand over control. For an avoidant, that level of exposure feels unbearable. So instead of speaking it, they live it in silence. That silence can look like sitting beside you without words, like watching you without announcing what's running through their mind, like creating space where their actions whisper what their mouth cannot bring itself to confess. This is where most people get it wrong. You misread the silence as indifference. You take the pauses as distance. You assume the lack of words equals a lack of love. But sometimes silence is the deepest language of the heart. Sometimes silence is the safest way an avoidant can reveal that they feel something so overwhelming, words would collapse under its weight. There is a philosophy here that goes beyond attachment styles. Silence has always been one of humanity's purest forms of communication. The greatest truths are often unspoken. The most powerful emotions are the hardest to articulate. Think of grief, awe, wonder, or even sacred love. These are experiences where words feel clumsy, where silence says more than 1,000 speeches ever could. For the avoidant, love falls into this same category. They can't say it, but their quiet stillness is a confession louder than words. Pay attention to how they behave in that silence. Do they linger near you even without conversation? Do they create moments where they can simply exist in your presence without performing or pretending? That stillness, that choice to remain instead of escape, is their hidden way of saying, "I am here, I care, you matter." And when you grasp that, you stop demanding the words and start seeing the reality. They love differently, but no less deeply. Now, silence can be uncomfortable for you, especially if you crave verbal assurance. But here's the shift in perspective. Instead of fearing the silence, step into it. Let yourself feel what it means. Silence forces you to pay attention to what is not being said, the micro expressions, the body language, the way their energy shifts around you. And when you train yourself to listen to silence, you begin to recognize love where others would miss it. But here's the paradox: their silence is not empty. It's full of emotions they can't articulate, full of thoughts they can't risk speaking aloud, full of love they can't yet bear to name. The quiet is their way of protecting the relationship while still experiencing it. It's their bridge between fear and desire. And here's something even deeper. Their silence is not just a shield for themselves, it's a gift to you. Because silence, unlike words, can't lie. Words can be rehearsed, manipulated, repeated without meaning. But silence is pure. Silence tells the truth of what someone feels, even when they're too afraid to speak it. So the next time you're sitting with an avoidant and the silence grows thick, don't rush to fill it. Don't demand an explanation. Don't assume disinterest. Instead, recognize what's happening, that silence may be their loudest confession. It may be the only way they know how to say, "I love you, but I don't know how to survive the weight of it." And if you can hold that silence, if you can let it breathe, instead of breaking it, You'll start to see what most people never see: the beauty of a love that isn't always spoken but is deeply real. Their silence is a mirror of their vulnerability. It's the evidence that you've reached a place inside them that words cannot touch. Because love, in its truest form, doesn't always need to be spoken. Sometimes the deepest, "I love you," isn't heard in a voice. It's felt in the silence. There's one thing avoidants guard more fiercely than anything else: time. Not money, not possessions, not even affection. It's their time, their space, their freedom to choose when and how they engage. For an avoidant, independence is oxygen. It is how they maintain control over their world. They measure safety by how much distance they can create between themselves and others. So when an avoidant begins to fall deeply in love, something remarkable happens. They give you the one thing they've spent their whole life protecting: their time. And that's not a small gesture. It's the ultimate act of surrender for someone who values solitude like currency. Think about it. Anyone can say, "I love you." Words are cheap. Anyone can buy a gift, send a message, make a gesture that looks like love. But time, that's the one resource that cannot be faked. You either give it or you don't. You either show up or you vanish. And when an avoidant starts showing up, when they choose to sit with you, talk with you, spend hours they could have spent alone, they are revealing something powerful. They are saying, without saying, "I trust you enough to share my most sacred resource." This is where people often miss the secret. You expect grand declarations, dramatic passion, or endless communication. But the avoidance love reveals itself in subtler, more profound ways. You'll notice they linger longer than necessary. They carve out time in their schedule when you know they value solitude. They show up when you least expect it, and you can almost feel the internal battle. Because for them, every hour with you is a surrender of their most precious freedom. And here's why it matters. Time is not just about minutes on a clock. Time is attention. Time is energy. Time is presence. For the avoidant, giving time means giving up the one form of control they trust the most: the control of being alone. By offering it to you, they're making an unspoken declaration: you matter more than my comfort. That's not just affection. That's transformation. Psychologically, avoidants are conditioned to equate closeness with danger. Their instinct is to retreat to safety in isolation. So when they override that instinct and begin to invest their time in you, it signals a seismic shift in their inner world. They are allowing you into their carefully controlled environment. They are rewriting the script of their own attachment, even if only in small increments. That's why time is not just about hanging out. It's a deep, symbolic gesture of love. Philosophically, time has always been seen as the greatest gift one human being can give another. You can't manufacture it. You can't get it back. Once given, it's gone forever. And so, when an avoidant gives you time, they are offering a piece of their life they will never reclaim. It's irreversible. That's why, for them, it's such a dangerous act, and also the most meaningful. Now, you may not always notice this shift, because it won't be wrapped in romance or exaggerated gestures. It will come quietly. They'll choose to sit with you when they could have gone home. They'll listen longer than their comfort zone allows. They'll delay their escape into solitude because something in them doesn't want to leave. It's in those seemingly small choices that their love speaks volumes. This is where perspective matters. If you're waiting for an avoidant to love you the way you expect, you may overlook the fact that they already are. You may dismiss their presence because it doesn't look dramatic enough. But you must understand, when someone who treasures independence starts trading it for your company, you are witnessing their deepest form of love. And here's the challenge. It's easy to overlook consistency when it's quiet. But that quiet consistency is everything. And avoidance love isn't about sweeping you off your feet. It's about the hours they give you, the presence they maintain, the sacred solitude they're willing to compromise, because being with you has become more valuable than being alone. So what does this mean for you? It means you must learn to read love differently. Stop looking only for what's spoken and start noticing what's given. Their time is not casual. Their presence is not random. Their choice to stay when they could have left is their hidden, I love you. And maybe that's the most powerful perspective shift of all. Love isn't always in the fireworks. Sometimes it's in the quiet moments, the lingering conversations, the hours that slip by unnoticed. When an avoidant gives you time, they are not just passing hours, they are giving you the one thing they cannot take back. That's not weakness. That's commitment in its purest form. Because for an avoidant, time is freedom. And when they choose to give that freedom to you, it is the most undeniable sign that love has broken through their walls. If you really want to understand avoidance, you have to understand one thing: their entire identity, their entire way of surviving the world is built on control. Control over their environment, control over their emotions, control over their access to other people. This control is their fortress. It's how they keep themselves safe from the chaos and unpredictability of love and intimacy. But something extraordinary happens when they fall in love. That control begins to slip, and what replaces it is fear. Not a mild nervousness, but a deep, visceral fear that they can't easily explain. Because for the first time, someone matters enough to disrupt the order of their inner world. Here's why this is so important. For the avoidant, control equals safety. As long as they are in charge of their time, their feelings, their boundaries, they feel untouchable. No one can wound them if they don't let anyone in. But love changes the equation. Love introduces risk. It creates dependence, vulnerability, exposure. Suddenly, they can't predict how you'll respond, they can't guarantee you'll stay, and they can't hide from how much they care. And that lack of control terrifies them. Think about it. Before love, an avoidant can navigate relationships on their own terms. They can keep things surface, level, light, manageable. They can maintain distance and convince themselves they're free. But once they truly love someone, they lose that power. They start thinking about you when they don't want to. They start needing you when they swore they never would. They start fearing your absence more than they fear closeness. And that's when fear takes over. But here's the paradox. Fear is not a sign of weakness here. It's the clearest sign of love, because you don't fear losing something you don't value. You don't fear vulnerability unless someone has touched you deeply enough to break through your defenses. The fear is proof that their love is real. This is where most people misunderstand avoidance. You see their fear-driven behavior, the pulling back, the hesitation, the mixed signals, and you assume they don't care. You think, if they love me, it would be easy. But love isn't easy for someone who's built their life on independence. Love dismantles their safety system. Love destabilizes the walls they've depended on for years. That trembling, that pulling back, that anxiety, it's not rejection. It's evidence that they're no longer in control. And for them, that only happens when love has already taken root. Philosophically, this connects to a universal truth. Love always requires surrender. You cannot truly love and remain in complete control, because love means handing someone the ability to affect you, to disappoint you, to wound you. That's why it's so terrifying and so beautiful. For the avoidant, this surrender is amplified tenfold because it goes against everything they've practiced their entire life. When they start to surrender control, it's not small, it's seismic. Psychologically, fear is the unavoidable consequence of attachment for them. Their nervous system reads intimacy as danger, so when love pulls them closer, their body reacts with alarm. The racing thoughts, the emotional withdrawal, the push-pull behavior. It's not a strategy to hurt you. It's the manifestation of fear replacing control. Now, here's the key insight. If you can see their fear for what it is, you stop taking it personally. You stop interpreting it as a lack of love. You start realizing that their fear is the most honest signal of how much they feel for you. because love is the only force powerful enough to strip them of control. And this isn't just about avoidance. This is about all of us. At some level, love always threatens our sense of control. It always introduces fear because it always matters. If it didn't matter, we wouldn't be afraid. The difference is that most people have learned to live with that fear, to integrate it into their relationships. Avoidants haven't. So when you see fear in them, you're seeing the rawest evidence of love in its most unrefined state. So let me leave you with this thought. Don't mistake their fear for a lack of love. Don't confuse their trembling for indifference. Understand it for what it truly is. The strongest signal you'll ever get that they are deeply, maybe even helplessly, in love. Because when fear replaces control, it means something profound has happened. It means their fortress has been breached. It means someone finally matters enough to shake the walls they thought would stand forever. One of the most misunderstood signs of an avoidant's love is their protective instinct. On the surface, avoidants seem detached, self-focused, sometimes even cold. They appear more concerned with preserving their independence than with safeguarding anyone else. But when they fall deeply in love, something shifts. That instinct to protect, which they normally reserve only for themselves, suddenly extends outward, and it overtakes their distance. Here's the paradox: the same person who once pulled away to protect their space will start pulling closer to protect you. The same individual who seemed unreachable even in moments of intimacy, will now pay attention to your well-being in ways that defy their usual patterns. It won't always be obvious or dramatic,